development. Your nation, which only a few decades ago was the second poorest country on the planet, with an average income in 1962 of $68, your GDP now over $35,000. How? Why did this happen? It is not by accident. It is by design, commitment, execution, planning. Young men and women of the future, please understand that this dedication of blood, sweat, and tears has given you a future of opportunity. And it is this spirit that we know very clearly of the Samao Undang that began decades ago. A vision when you were down on your knees, struggling and suffering, and the World Food Program was here, giving you a helping hand. But we could only do so much. It was up to you to design the vision and execute to give you the successes that you now have. To come here for me is an honor, because it is this type program that needs to be replicated and modeled around the world. We need to export these values, these virtues, these systems that have proven themselves among a people so great. And when you come from the number 2 poorest country on the planet, and I go to poor countries every day, every week, every month, and I tell them there is hope. All you need to do is come to this university, Yeungnam University, and learn the spirit and catch the vision. My father loved this country. My father always talked about his love for the people and the spirit and the suffering. I wish my father were here. He would be so moved, but I know his spirit is here, because he would be with so much pride and joy to see where you are today. When I was elected United States governor, we had the second worst economy in the United States. Within 2 years, we were the number 1 economy in the United States. How did this happen? It's this spirit that we believe that we can empower people. Take the talent that's on the ground and empower them with a vision and deliver that vision, and great things will happen. The world today is moving in the wrong direction. When I took this job over 5 years ago, I was talked into this by my Democrat and Republican friends in the United States Senate and U.S. House, who said the world is in great need of the World Food Program. And I said, I don't want a job. But friends talk you into more noble things than sometimes ourselves alone can do. At that time, there were 80 million people marching to starvation. That's different than chronic hunger. My goal was to put the World Food Program out of business. That we would design and implement programs in the spirit that you understand in Samao, that nations around the world would no longer need outside support. But sadly, we're going backwards. not because our programs don't work, but because of man-made conflict and climate shocks. In fact, we went from 80 million people marching to starvation to 135 million right before COVID. The question, why? Man-made conflict, climate shocks. Then COVID comes along. Economic devastation to the poorest of the poor countries around the world. Debt incurred for safety net programs. $27 trillion worth of economic stimulus programs. The world stepped up. I spoke to the United Nations Security Council and said, you cannot answer COVID in a vacuum. We must deal with a COVID pandemic and a hunger pandemic at the same time. Otherwise, the cure will be worse than the disease. World leaders responded. We averted famine and destabilization of nations and mass migration because the world leaders stepped up. But we thought that COVID would be behind us by 2022, only to see it recycle again and again, continuing this economic devastation. And then, and only then, when you think and thought that it could not get any worse, Afghanistan. Then you think it can't get any worse? Ukraine. The breadbasket of the world now has the longest bread lines of the world. You know that feeling. A nation that produces enough food to feed 400 million people. Those commodities are now taken off the marketplace. What impact do you think that will have on the world's poorest of the poor? Over 36 nations depend upon Ukraine and Russia for their grains, for 50% or more. The World Food Program, over 50% that we buy, as we support over 130 million people. Some nations like Egypt, Lebanon, over 80%. But here is what is extremely troubling. Since the Ukraine war, the number of people marching to starvation has now gone from 276 million. See, when COVID hit, 130. Then in the middle of COVID, 276 million people. Now in Ukraine, is 345 million people marching to starvation. And what's extremely troubling is that within that, there are 50 million people knocking on famine's door in 45 countries. If you wish to know which countries in the next 12 months will destabilize, have famine, and mass migration, I can lay out those 45 countries. We must respond immediately. Otherwise, it will cost the global economy 1,000 times more. We know from experience when we fail to act in time, it costs so much more, not just in lost lives and misery and destitution, but economic impact. We can feed, for example, a Syrian inside Syria for 50 cents a day. That same Syrian ends up in Berlin or Brussels. The humanitarian package alone is over $70 a day. Germany just did a very simple study with 1 million refugees from Syria. Over 5 years, $125 billion. $70 a day, 50 cents a day. And guess what? Refugees don't want to leave home. But if they don't have food, any degree of peace, they will do what any mother or father would do to find peace. Food is the pathway of peace. You clearly understand that. This is why we are so excited to partner with your university to help model this spirit, these programs, this institution around the world. When I see students from Asia and Africa especially, as we've already begun to model in many of these countries, we look forward to partnering and scaling this up even more. The world is in trouble. But I'm not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. A friend told me one time, all the darkness in the world can't put out the light of one little match. When I look in the back of this room, I see sparks of hope. And when enough sparks come together, it creates a combustion of light. That will ignite the most powerful force known to mankind, and that is love. Love your neighbor. Love one another. This is what the world needs. We need more of it. And you young people, regardless of what nation you come from, we're all brothers and sisters alike. The spirit of humanity shines brightly on this campus. It's this spirit that you will carry forward around the world. It's this spirit that will bring us out of the darkness and into the light, that will give hope to young people that need hope unlike any time in modern history. So, Mr. President, it is my honor to be with you. Thank you, sir.